Hello, everyone. Hello. You're well? Okay, thank you so much. I'm Harry Ochieng. Where do I stand? I'm Harry Ochieng, based here in Nairobi, Kenya. I work with Innovate Now. Innovate Now is the first Africa's assistive technology accelerator. So basically what we do, we incubate and accelerate assistive technology startups. Yeah, so I'm the investor linkage associate. My work is very simple. I prepare the startups to be investor ready, link them to the most suitable investors, and also support them in the entire investment process. Yeah, so those are simple tasks, but very difficult one. Very difficult. Yeah, so we are here to talk about fundraising for a T startup. I request if you can put the slides up. Yeah, so I'm very passionate about AT startups because number one of the great potential for impact. But again, number two, it's because of the massive opportunity that it presents. So those are the reasons why I'm very passionate about AT startups. AT startups has a very big potential for returns, but on top of that, has a very big potential for impact. Yeah, but when you are talking to investors, you talk of returns and impact, not impact and returns. Yeah, so it is important to support AT startup. That is how we define AT startups as companies dedicated to developing technology solutions for persons with disabilities at market enabler startups are ventures that help unlock the purchasing power of distribution and market consolidation, financing, insurance, and all that. Yeah, so even AT enabler startups, we classify them as AT startup. Yeah, so fundraising generally is very difficult today. Whether you are an AT startup or you are not an AT startup, whether you are a fintech startup, fundraising has become very difficult, more so in Africa. If you compare the amount investment that is getting into the continent today and 2 years ago, there's a trend of decline. It keeps reducing. And it's because when venture capital came into Africa 10 years ago, most of the funds, their fund life is always 10 years. And the returns are not very pleasing, or the number of exits are low as investors expected. But again, the lessons for the last 10 years indicate that Africa is a very fragmented market. When investors were coming, most of the time, the founders were selling the African story. And they were quoting the 1.4 billion population as the market side that they are targeting. But later it was realized that Africa has 54 different markets. So you cannot sell the 1.4 billion. So investors have become more wise. The industry is going into what we call self-correction. So it's more difficult to fundraise. And again, we've seen a lot of well-funded startups closing down. Going down with millions and millions of, USD investors' money. Those startups. Any that you can remember, let me hear, let me see. Any startup that fundraise but have gone down, have closed down. Pardon? Sandy is one of them, the most recent. Any other? Pardon? Kune. Which one again? Trigger. As Trigger closed down, they have some issues, eh? Yeah, so that has made fundraising to be very difficult. And allow me to say that fundraising requires hard work, consistency, and a good strategy. I've been supporting 80 founders. And I think one of the challenges is seems like founders don't really understand what it takes to fundraise. People think that if you have a good idea, then when you decide that you want to fundraise, then the investors will be there to give you money. It's a lot of hard work. So as a founder, you have to be ready to do hard work. Then again, you must have a good strategy. You don't just approach an investor and tell that. So you must have a very good strategy to succeed in your fundraising. But again, it's important to approach fundraising as a long-term strategy. So if I'm fundraising for Pre-Seed today, I need to, whatever I'm doing now should be preparing me to fundraise the Series E or Series D. So it's a long-term strategy. It's not a one-event thing. More so if you want to walk the entire fundraising journey. Yeah, then fundraising also, for 80 startup, I always say it's more difficult. As an 80 founder, then you need to do more work compared to the other guys. If you talk about fintech, investors already know what fintech is. You talk about assistive technology, most investors don't understand. Then you explain that these are technology solutions for people living with disabilities. Then what their mind, they're already thinking of is grants. Are we together? They're already thinking of grants. They cannot see the opportunity for returns. So they're already thinking of, this is a guy who needs a grant. This is a guy that if I give them my money, then possibly there is not going to be returns. So you have to educate the investor. Number one, you have to inform them, help them understand what assistive technology is. Then you also need to educate them and show them the opportunity, the investment opportunity in the AT sector, and also show them the great impact. And when you are selling that story, please, you start with the returns and impact, not impact and returns. It is returns and impact. Because investors, what they are looking for is, a viable business. Then on top of that, there is impact. So even the impact investors, start with the returns. Then impact. Yeah, so this process can be divided into around 3 phases. Number one, investor readiness and preparation. In other words, before you start to fundraise, it is important to ensure that you are ready for investment before you start engaging. Then you need to prepare for it. Those are the things you are going to talk about. Then the second phase is investor engagement. So you need to have a very good strategy of engaging investors without, dropping or delaying the process. Investors are very fast. They receive a lot of pitches. So if you start the process and relax along the way, by the time you're coming back, they have already invested in a competitor. And we have what is called portfolio diversification, meaning the investors, they have a strategy to invest. So if they want one AT startup in the mobility, if you delay and they get that startup, by the time you are coming back, they cannot invest there again because they already balanced their portfolio. Then the last stage, of course, now is deal execution, where now you've secured the investment, issues of the term sheets, contracts, and portfolio, post-investment value. Yeah, so investor readiness, Before you decide that I want to raise VC funding, and maybe to put this into context, this training is focused on commercial funding, so it's not covering grants. So we are going to, talking about mostly venture capital fundraising. So investor readiness, please, number one, it is important to ensure that your business is VC backable. What is a VC backable business? Number one, the problem. The venture capital, they invest in businesses that are providing solutions to problems, and not that just problems, painful problems. So the problem must be painful and big. So if the problem is painful, but only affecting few people, then that is not suitable for a VC. If the problem is not painful enough, to an extent that somebody is willing to pay for it, then that is not suitable for a VC. So the problem must be painful and big. Are we together? The problem must be painful and big. Then number two, the solution. The solution needs to be innovative. Investors don't like another solution. It must be innovative. The value proposition must be clear. The competitive advantage must be clear. It has to come out clearly why investors will choose, why users. Thank you. We'll stop here briefly for something. So, thank you. Yeah, so your solution must have a very clear competitive advantage. It must be clear why a user will choose your solution and not the competitor. And we are not talking about price competition, that your solution is more affordable to, no. That is not part of it. So in terms of your offering, in terms of, the solution you are offering, the innovation and all those kind of things. Yeah, so that is very key. Then the market size must be big. You must be serving a large market. That if you get maybe only 10% of the market share, then that can make you to grow to a unicorn. The competition, of course, I've talked about it. There must be a competitive advantage. But again, allow me to say you must have competitors. If you don't have a competitors, that is a red flag. Number one, it may show that you are solving a problem that does not exist, because you are not the only one who is innovative. Are we together? You are solving a problem that does not exist, or the problem exists, but it is beyond the innovators, ability, or it is beyond the innovators' ability to solve it. For example, there may be policy issues, there may be infrastructural issues. For example, long time before the M-Pesa was here, as much as you wanted to create a fintech solution, it will be very difficult. But when M-Pesa came, it provided the infrastructure. Or long time before the internet, we could not do much. So if you don't have competition, then it means maybe there are policy issues that are beyond the innovators' ability, or there are no, available infrastructure to enable you to solve that problem. So competition is good. You only need to have a very clear competitive advantage. You need to have a very clear and innovative go-to-market strategy that makes your, market entry, user acquisition, customer acquisition cost to be very low. So the go-to-market strategy need to be very, very innovative, and also help your customer acquisition cost to be low. The issue of revenue model, the revenue model need to be very clear. Users should be willing to pay you for your solution. Then before I talk about, then the team, the venture capitalists, they don't invest in the idea. They invest in the team. So you must have a very great team. The team, if you are running a technology solution, there should be a technical co-founder. Somebody who can build the solution by themselves. You are able to build the solution as the co-founding team without depending on an external person. The sector that you are solving in, you need to have, at least the founding team should have experience in that sector. Maybe they have worked in that sector, or they have been engaged in that sector, and they have some insights about that sector. For example, if I've been in so much in the renewable energy and all that, or in the fintech, and I want to develop a solution in the transport and mobility, then there is no founder market fit. There is what we call founder market fit. So at least one of the founders should be having a founder market fit. We should be having some, should have, yes, that's stopping now. Let me just complete that. Yeah, so we should have some founder market fit. If you're running a technology solution, let's have one of the founders, a technical founder, then one of the founders have experience in business and all that. Yeah, allow me to stop there, then we'll pick it up later.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So today we have a very special guest. He's called Christopher Pachno, so please just come to the front. He'll introduce himself, he'll tell us where he's from, and then he'll give us a brief presentation.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting your presentation. So my name is Christopher. I lead accessibility and disability for Google, for EMEA. So this means my responsibility is Africa, Middle East, and Europe, to try to understand what the needs are of the community and bring it inside to Google so we can make our products and our platforms and our culture and our services more accessible. And I'll be here with you for, I'd say, 20, 25 minutes. So thank you for your understanding, because I have to leave at 10 to 10:30. So make it 20 minutes. So I'm going to start with a personal story, so you have a little more insight of who I am. I'm a failed musician. I studied music in school, and in my mid-20s, I realized I was making a lot more money waiting on tables than I was singing. So I gave up, but I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. So my second gig in tech was Apple, where I worked for 10 years. I worked on the first iTunes, I worked on the first iPod, the G4 towers, the G5 towers, and Final Cut Studio. Better? Oh, good. Thank you. So then after 10 years at Apple, I went to Sony Ericsson. I made mobile phones for a couple years. And then I even ended up at Disney Mobile making games. But finally, I went to Google. And at Google, where I've been now for 12 years, this is where I learned about accessibility. I'd never thought of it. I never heard of it. My third job at Google, I was the lead technical program manager for Google Play Music, what's now YouTube Music. And we had a test engineer come into one of our meetings, and she turned on voiceover. And I heard button, 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 button. I asked, what's that? And she said, well, this is Google Play Music for someone who's blind. I said, well, that's stupid. How do they use it? I said, well, they don't. That's why I'm here. So that was my introduction into this world. And I couldn't look away. Within a couple months, I volunteered to take on accessibility for Google Play. And then I did a dalliance in VR. But I joined the central accessibility team about 8 years ago. My first job was to help make accessibility organizations around the company. And then 3 years ago, I moved to the UK to do this work in EMEA. So what I want to explain to you is why Google is doing accessibility. And I'll do this quickly. Simply, accessibility is part of our mission statement, to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. Universally accessible means if you leave out people with disabilities, we're not doing our job. And we're never going to be perfect. We are not perfect, but we know what we have to do and we try. And this means the real world and the digital world. It's not just making sure that Gmail on your mobile device works, but also using your mobile phone. We can tell you, if we know, where there's an accessible restaurant, whether they have stairs, whether they have an accessible bathroom. And the more of this information that we have, the more that we can share to help people with disabilities live a better life in the world that they were born in, which wasn't designed with them in mind. Because, as we know, there's 1.3 billion that have profound disabilities according to the WHO, but there's also those of us who are not identified of having a disability. And this is interesting because a lot of us, like myself, didn't know we had a disability, or there's the stigma of disability, which is real. And if you don't want to acknowledge it, you're not going to look at these kinds of tools. But then also there's the friends and family of those with a disability. Say, for example, if you're in a chair and there's a series of stairs that takes you to where everyone wanted to go, say, to a restaurant, you're not going to go. And your friends won't go either. So there is sort of this broader impact of building more inclusive technologies and places. But finally, thoughtfully, there is so many things that we can do to make all of our experiences better for everyone, because there's the situational disabilities, say you have a broken arm, or just a glare on your screen, there's the temporary, and of course there's the permanent disabilities. So in reality, every one of us is going to have a need, and if you build your products thoughtfully, you're going to meet everyone's need before they even know they need it. So what I'll do is I want to share with you a couple of key ways of thinking about how to build inclusively. But first, there's a secret I need to share, and this is really more geared towards, this is a message I give to larger businesses, but before you get started, there's always a need to make a choice. Because if you're building something and you aren't making it accessible, next slide please, there's always going to be a need to have constraints. There's always more things you want to do than you have time for, or you need to save money, so you have to make a choice because it will give you an ability to focus. Because you sometimes just need to get stuff out. But if you don't do that thoughtfully, if you don't keep it above the line, you're going to get to a situation where you don't do it at all. And that's what we want to try to avoid. So here are the key methods I want to share. First, leverage your strengths. Do what you're good at. Make sure you understand thoughtfully and deeply the technology that you want to engage. If you're just learning, don't get started. Learn to use it really, really well. Next, and this is the most important, nothing about us without us. Always design and invent with the community you want to support. You may be someone in a chair, but you represent one person's lived experience. You want to ask other people's, because other people's needs are going to be different. So you want to include a broad selection whenever you can. Next, start with one, because it's a lot. With 1.3 billion people, that's an awful lot of people. So how do you do this? You start with one person, or you start with one feature. Build one accessible feature in your product. Or, heck, just start fixing one bug, because the most important thing is you just get started, because you're never going to be done. Because this is a matter of a process. Perfection shouldn't be the goal towards your application. You want to make progress on it, because you're never going to make anything perfectly accessible for everyone. So why make that the goal? Make it better and better for the people you're trying to serve, and then learn, and then broaden out your offering. Then you make it useful for more and more people. And some people think curb cuts is the answer. Build to the curb cut. But if you build to the curb cut, you might miss the need of the community you really want to support. So even if you have something that could have a curb cut effect, a broader than just disability use, nail the needs of the community first, and then broaden it out. So what I want to do is I want to share with you an example of that we've done with this at Google, specifically around captions. And I want to start with captions because this is where we had probably the most experience using AI and accessibility. And again, what we're good at Google for these days is probably AI. But in 2009, we had our first experiment with automated captions on YouTube. And they weren't really good, but we learned the lesson that something that's not very good is still a whole lot better than nothing that's perfect. So we continued to invent, we continued to evolve, we continued to invest. And now we have 17 different languages for free on all videos on YouTube because we continued to learn. But then we took this platform and applied it to the business context in Google Meet, sort of our version of Zoom. And we started off with English, But today we have 26 different languages that are generally available, but another 50 that are coming in beta, that are coming online, including African languages and Indic languages and even variations of Arabic. So the more you do, the better you get. But I want to talk about mobile, because I think the most important tool you have is the one that's with you. There's a really clever application called Live Transcribe and Notifications. And this provides real-time transcription in over 80 different languages in your phone, on your Android phone. And it can also tell you about sounds that happen in your world, like a baby cry, a car horn. You can even tell us your name, and if we hear your name, we'll tell you when people are calling your name. And what's cool is if you can't speak, or you choose not to speak, you can pop out a keyboard and type your questions. But again, because this is AI, it's not perfect. So when the AI gets it wrong, the person who's speaking can pop up the keyboard and correct themselves. So say your proper name or medical terminology or just corporate jargon, you can correct it so the person who's deaf can understand exactly what's being said. Next slide, please. And it was invented by these two people. Now, what I don't know is if this video is going to work, so I'm just going to skip this one because it's given time constraints, and I want also to save some time for questions. Let's skip this next video. So you understand what Live Transcribe does. What that video was to share was the person, the chief research scientist himself is deaf. And the person who did it with him was his friend, and they wanted to work together better. So they built a prototype over a weekend so they could work better together. And then they submitted this prototype into a hackathon, and it won. And then we turned it into Live Transcribe, and we've been working on this for years and years, all from these two guys who wanted to work together better. This is that exact whole thing in one nutshell. It's start with one, do what you're good at, nothing about us without us, in real life. And this is something we're shipping on a daily basis. But we weren't done because we realized this live transcription is great for the real world, but there's a lot of stuff that lives on your phone that isn't always captioned. Social media posts, audio notes, videos that your friends send to you. So we shrunk the model, again, continuing to innovate on the technology. We shrunk this model that used to be 2 gigabytes in the cloud to a couple hundred megabytes that sits on your phone. And now that we have this in many languages, we can now provide real-time captions for almost any audio stream on your phone. Again, social media posts, voice notes, and videos. It's in about 6 languages now. We're adding more and more over time. But I do want to show this one. So what happens is when you have this ability to communicate with someone, you communicate with the people you love, and sometimes you surprise yourself. And I hope this video works. The Wi-Fi here hasn't been great this weekend. And if you could, do we have audio? Well, we have captions. No audio? Okay. So I don't know who's in the room. I'll try to audio describe this as much. So this is a guy named Matthew. He's 55 years old, and for the first time in his life, he was able to call his son. Now there's a sort of introduction of who Matthew is. He's a deaf man in England. He's pretty cool. He likes to swim in cold water, like even cold for England's cold water. He swam across the English Channel, and he learned about the live caption feature. And with this live caption feature, he decided to call his son. And why this is important is before this, because he's deaf, he couldn't use the phone. He had to use Zoom or WhatsApp and a video call. And that's not a great experience because it's flat. It's a flat screen. The lip reading gets to be more and more difficult. So that doesn't work out very well. So he had this live caption feature. And then through that, he was able to call his son. In the middle of his call, he said, "Dad, you know, for the first time in my life, we're talking on the phone." And he realized at that moment what that really meant. So he's saying here, if I have a hearing on, people think I can hear everything, but that's not true. There's a series of videos of images of different scenes in England. He says, "I lip read most of the time," which actually could be very difficult. "I have 2 boys. They play a very important part in my life." This is Matthew's youngest son. He says, "Hi, I'm Harry." He lives in Hong Kong, and he's a rugby player. And Matthew says, "I always want to keep in touch with him, but I need to communicate with him through Zoom or WhatsApp. So I would try to lip read him," which is hard, as I said, on Zoom or Teams because it's a flat screen. It's hard to lip read. But when the live caption feature came out on the Google Pixel phone, Harry was the first person he called. In the middle of that call, he said, "Dad, did you realize this is the first time we've talked on the phone?" And he said, "I was speechless for 3 to 4 seconds, and I realized what it meant. For the first time in my life, I was able to call my son." Okay. We go ahead and pause the video. So this is an example of technology really impacting a person at a human level. We want to build a business, but we have to realize the business is really in service of the people we're trying to support. Now, the business has to survive to do that, but it starts with our user. Next slide, please. So we continued on with this feature even more. Now that we realized we were able to create captions on your phone, what if you can't speak? So we took the text-to-speech ability in Android and added it to the dialer. And now you can be deaf and nonverbal, or just nonverbal, but you're able to use the phone just like anybody else. You can type a message in, click send like in WhatsApp, it will generate a voice for you. So now you can use the phone just like anybody else, and we'll talk for you with what you have to say. Next slide. But the technology itself keeps on evolving. There's a screenshot here of a woman wearing sort of chunky black glasses, and next to it it says, "You should be seeing what I'm saying, just transcribed for you in real time." This is a prototype. This is not a product. This is a prototype when we were experimenting with augmented reality and captioning. And the hard part here is the glasses. No one's made glasses that you want to wear that actually has the functionality that you want. Here's some great opportunity for innovation, folks. But the technology will continue to evolve. People's needs and expectations will continue to evolve. That's what we're building towards. We're building to meet people's expectations if we do it right before they know it's even there. Next slide. So just to recap, and then we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A if you'd like. 1, leverage your strengths. Do what you're good at. And at Google, it's AI, but what are you good at? And how can you leverage what you are good at into building something that means so much to other people? Next is nothing about us without us. This is probably the most important. You need to build with the community, not for. Start with one. Start with one person, start with one feature, or just start with one bug, because this is a matter of progress, not perfection. But really the most important thing is to get started, because if you don't get started, it doesn't matter, does it? If you don't start, no one's ever going to be able to take advantage of the tools you have, the products that you've built. So please get started. And unfortunately, the last one is the video. Without sound, it's not as important. But there was going to be a video there that talks about our application called Look to Speak, which we use a little bit of computer vision to watch someone's eyes go from side to side, and you can bisect lists on each side and allow someone to say something that you want. It even lets you swear, which is an important part of communication. But the technology that we build, that you are building, is to help people. And by doing this together, we can really make a difference in many, many people's lives. Thank you. So, are there any questions that I can answer for you? We have about 5 minutes before Harry comes back. Please.
Yeah, we are really so glad to have you today.
How are you?
This is the African team. We are all innovators. But sometimes we face a challenge that after innovating, to build a product, it takes much more. But how can you guide us in terms of getting funding for our products to make an MVP? Can you partner with Google? Like partnering with Google or partnering with some other investors out there, how can you make that? Because the product needs someone to push it. We are all young people here. We hustle for a day, and you have to build systems for our community, because that's our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. The question was, how can an organization like Google help fund some of these innovations? And at this time, there's an organization called google.org, which does fund innovation and does fund things, but it tends to be in themes. Right now, the theme that they're looking at, just so you know, is AI-based. So if you're working on a digital technology, there is an opportunity to seek funding through our google.org. If you're building a physical device, unfortunately, we're Google, we're a digital company. There's not really an opportunity to invest in physical devices. But digital ones there are, and if you lean in AI, there might be a possibility. Any other questions?
Thank you for the presentation, wonderful and beautiful. And there is quite a challenge here. For instance, we see, like in Denmark, there is an assistive technology there that has been developed and that it was brought to Rwanda, you know, and we have seen different innovations in phones that shows live translation or interpretation. So now we have quite some different. We have Apple and we have Android phones, whereby some, when you download, it is free, some it is not free. But you see, for persons with disabilities, some of them need to access information, but it needs to be known whether downloading is free or not, because in some phones it cannot. So that is quite some challenge, the question.
Thank you. That's a
Thank
good
you.
that's a good question, and actually I think there's two parts of this, if I may. One question is, what application do I want? It's the awareness problem, like what applications can help me? And then once you solve the awareness, then it's cost. Now we at Google, the applications, everything I've shown you here is free. We don't charge for our applications. And our friends at at Apple, they don't charge for their assistive applications, and Microsoft doesn't charge for theirs. So if you're looking for these platform applications, they should be free. And we do this because we have that platform. But the Live Transcribe, for example, that we build doesn't run on Apple, because we want to make it as great an experience for as many people on Android. Apple has amazing engineers, and when they get to that, I'm sure they'll make a similar kind of application experience. But all of ours are free. Yes? Microphone?
Good morning once again. Thank you so much for the awesome presentation. I come from Uganda. So my question is this. You know, sometimes when we download maybe through the Google, there are actually some phrases which are, some words are very minimal. For instance, we have the deaf and we have the deaf blind who need to use the website sometimes, and they need to use the braille or anything. Remember that Google missions, the mission of Google is about inclusion as well. So how do you make it accessible even to the deaf blind users? Thank you.
So the Android platform supports braille. So if the information is available in braille, you have access to it. In Google Chrome as well, that has this interesting feature called live caption, similar to what we showed on Android, but it's built into the browser. So this means any video that you can watch in your browser can have captions, and it will also pipe these captions into a refreshable braille display. So this is built into Chrome browser. It's free, and it's helpful. It's not perfect, but again, something that's imperfect is better than nothing that's perfect. Of course.
So thank you, Chris, for the presentation. And I couldn't help but notice that some of the features that you're sharing, actually, I use them in my application Inclusive Chat. Something like the text-to-speech, like a user speaks into the microphone and have the text transcribed. So I had a question, actually. It might come out of context, but something about PWS, progressive web applications. Can we have them uploaded to distribution channels like Play Store, and users can be able to install them and use them?
So progressive web applications should be able to be uploaded to the Chrome Store. I don't know, what I don't know is how they work on the App Store. So you've got my LinkedIn profile there. Yep. Connect with me, message me there, and I'll find out the information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, this is the last question I have time. Thank you all very much. I will be here through the week. Please come and find me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and give me a question there. I'm happy to answer as much as I can. I'll probably be more transparent than I should be, but I think it's helpful. Thank you all very much.